Let's take the home fires burning issue now, which we seem to have Chris Bowen. He's talking about abandoning coal and more renewables and batteries. And as Chris Kenny was saying earlier, he seems to think he has the solution to storing renewable energy at his fingertips. At the same time, we're being warned about blackouts. A very different scene here at home, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. So I think their climate policy is crackers. This is exactly what the road to net zero will look like, Rowan. These blackouts, these disruptions. I mean, many countries in the world are more advanced down the renewable path than we are, and they are in even bigger energy trouble. You know, Britain, Germany, and to get out of the trouble, they have to restart coal-fired power stations, turn to gas, and the only one that's not in a lot of trouble is France because it relies predominantly on nuclear power. Now, up until a minute ago, the Labor state governments in Australia were banning gas exploration. Now they're saying you've got to have more gas domestically. But according to the Greens, gas is the work of the devil, only one speck less evil than coal. But, you know, you can't power a modern economy any other way. Renewables only work when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, and the cost of having backup power, so you've got to have coal or gas or some other plant fully functional all the time, even if you don't use it much, because it's got to be there to back up when the renewables aren't working. This is the future. You know, I'm Lincoln Stephens. I've seen the future and it doesn't work.
Well, Greg, I imagine our current woes might have made it into the conversation, the phone conversation between two eminent global leaders. President Xi of China and Russian President Vladimir Putin have had a phone call together. What do you think they were chatting about, Greg?
Well, President Xi, according to the Russian report of the conversation, and I'm sure the Russians wouldn't verbal Xi Jinping because the consequences of that would be too severe. Xi has expressed his support for Russia's actions in the Donbass region of Ukraine, said that Russia's actions are justified and understandable, and blamed NATO and the United States for the war in Ukraine. Now, this is extremely disturbing. I'm going to explore partly in a piece on Saturday. Xi Jinping and China are increasingly using the same language that Putin uses about Ukraine to describe Taiwan and Asia. And initially, people were saying Xi Jinping is embarrassed by his embrace of Vladimir Putin. He seems to be not very embarrassed about it at all. And he's got a very powerful friend. I mean, the war isn't going that well for the Russians, but they still have thousands of nuclear weapons and, 100 million people and vast, one of the biggest land masses on Earth and so on. And now they're an ally of the People's Republic of China, and they're a fellow enemy of the United States and indeed of Australia.
And Greg, question without notice, what did you make of the Pope? I know your interest in religious affairs has led to some terrific books. What did you make of the Pope kind of playing a bit of moral equivalence or refusing to, blaming NATO basically for Russia's invasion of Ukraine? What did you make of that?
Well, look, I'd tell you honestly, Rowan, all joking aside, this is the most disappointing statement I've seen from the Pope. There's no justification for it at all. I've tried to see the good in the Pope, and, he's obviously a good person, but when he talks about economics and foreign affairs, he often says things that are just wrong. But he has the saving virtue of frequently saying he has no expertise in economics and foreign affairs, and he amply proves that every time he speaks on it. But you don't need any expertise to see who the aggressor is in Ukraine. And he may think that he's playing some deep game of trying to, draw the Russian Orthodox Church into dialogue or something. But look, if the Pope can't speak with moral clarity in a situation as extreme as this, where innocent Ukrainian towns are being slaughtered by bombs, innocent Ukrainian civilians are being murdered and raped and killed as a matter of Russian state policy, then really he ought just not to say anything about it at all.
And Greg, just speaking of kind of morality, if you like, Australia has refused to sign up to the US statement calling for an end to disproportionate scrutiny of Israel by the UN Human Rights Council, which was backed by 22 nations, including Britain, Germany, Brazil, others. Australia did its own statement, which I discussed yesterday with Michael Danby, saying it was deeply concerned about the ongoing conflict, loss of life and human rights. Just briefly, what did you make of the Labor position there, good or bad?
Well, look, I'd have rather they went with our friends. I don't think there was any reason not to. But in fairness, I'd just say that their statement didn't only, express concern about the conflict, but it did criticise the UN agencies for disproportionate focus on Israel. Now, if you're going to say the same thing as your friends, why not say it with your friends? But this is the second best position. If you won't say it with your friends, at least say it independently. And although Gareth Evans and a few folks praised the government for this, I wouldn't hold that too much against them. They were still defending Israel against a disproportionate obsession by the UN.
Greg Sheridan, always great to chat to you, and I, for one, will certainly be reading that Saturday column in the Weekend Australian, as I always do. Great reading, looking forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Credlin.